Hey guys, welcome to Season 2 of Capsule Production. It's been a crazy few months on rotation. I've been on rotation in Germany, at the VA, the FDA, and several other places, so I have lots of great stories and some pretty cool interviews to share. Today's interview is extremely interesting as well. I have a mom, a friend to the podcast, a student pharmacist, a friend of the college. It's all the same person, and she's going to share how she juggles everything. Without further ado, please welcome Hillary Landers.
Okay, so we are here with another episode of Capsule Podcast Productions. My name is Jeff Comta. I'm hosting today for Brendan Klee, and I have the man here, Randy Budrum. Randy, what's going on?
How y'all doing out there? It's a pleasure to be back helping Brandon and yourself out with another episode of the Capsule Podcast. So thanks for having me back again.
All right, and today we have a very special and dear guest with us, and she is a classmate of ours. Her name is Hillary Landers. And today's podcast is going to be about home life and balancing it with pharmacy school. And Hillary, you're sort of a local celebrity, if I may, here at the Orlando campus. You and the entire Landers family.
Yeah,
if I can give
true.
you your little introduction here, Hillary and her husband Kevin and her cutest girls ever in the world. How old are they now?
6 years old.
Her two twin daughters, 6 years old, Reese and Avery.
Mm-hmm.
They're little local celebrities here at the Orlando campus. They appear at all functions, along with Hillary. And so that kind of makes Hillary super mom, super wife, super student in our eyes. And so we wanted to make a podcast for other students coming into pharmacy school who might find themselves in a situation where they have to balance such a home life. And so we want to hear from you, how do you do it? So first of all, can you tell us what it's like balancing this?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me, first of all. I kind of knew going into it when I applied to pharmacy school. My daughters were 2. They were 3 when I started. And just having kids, I knew that I was also going to try to work while I was in school. So I kind of knew going in, both eyes open, that it was going to be a struggle. It was going to be a lot of balancing. And something that I struggle with daily is kind of fine-tuning the balance. There are days when it goes off kilter, and there are days when I feel like I'm dropping the ball somewhere. So I promise you, like all moms, on the outside, it looks a lot easier than it really is. Kind of like an iceberg, what you see on the surface is much smaller than what's actually going on below.
Mm-hmm. So that smile you've always got on is...
It's partly personal reminder that I'm doing okay.
All right. And just to get the audience up to speed, you have the 2 girls. We have Kevin at home, your husband. You have, the throes of pharmacy school to deal with, if I can put it in a gentle way. And then you've also had a couple internships that you've been through as well, right?
Yeah, I started doing an internship at Florida Hospital, East Orlando. And then within the last year and a half, actually last summer, I transitioned and I took on a position at the Orlando VA Medical Center as a technician/intern, which has been a great opportunity. My husband has been incredibly supportive. You guys have met him, and you kind of know he comes with his own, persona that everybody just knows
He's
about
a character.
him.
He's
Yeah.
a character.
But, he encourages me to take opportunities where they come. So that was a big one for me. I also have, 10 years experience behind me as a technician. So it wasn't a huge obstacle for me starting out in the intern position, because you do learn a lot of the roles that a technician takes on in the hospital setting. So it wasn't a large learning curve for me in terms of that transition, which made it a bit easier all around.
All right.
Wow, juggling a lot. And I remember my first days on campus, if I can just recollect for a little bit here. I remember talking to Hillary initially. She was an ambassador, right? We didn't get into that yet. And answering my questions that I had, and doing it with a smile. And
The smile is always there.
Yeah, yeah. And just giving me that energy to push forward. Now, there are a lot of obstacles that come with the territory here in pharmacy school, and you've got a lot of obligations that you've had to fulfill. What was the hardest part or what were some of the hardest things you had to overcome?
I knew going in that I also wanted to pursue a residency. My main goal going in was to do ambulatory care, so I kind of knew if I wanted to achieve the goals I had set for myself that was like built in to to graduating pharmacy school, try to complete a residency. So I made sure that I was involved and took on positions and took on leadership roles where I could. And honestly, through the process, one of the toughest obstacles that I've had to deal with is learning how to say no. They tell you all the time to be a yes man, and when you have a lot on your plate, that can become very overwhelming very quickly. So at some point, you have to look at everything that's on your plate, and you have to realize that, the opportunity was presented when I got the position at the VA. Somebody had asked me, why don't you stay on as the intern at East and then also take on the position at the VA?
Of course.
You don't have to work full-time hours, so potentially I could juggle both.
And the kids and the husband and the school.
Right. And the way I looked at it was, I've done a great job at my first internship, and I loved it, and I could leave on good terms, and I could, maintain that situation that I had and move on to something new. Or I could stretch myself thin and potentially let myself down on both ends. And that's where the balance comes out with a lot of things. You can do something completely, or you can do a bunch of things and halfway do them well. So for me, being able to say no to certain things and being able to kind of moderate what I am able to do and what I'm able to extend myself for, and then also realizing that just because there's something that I'm passionate about or interested in doesn't mean that I'm going to be able to give all of myself. And in everything I do, I want to try to give as much of myself as I can.
Seems like you're pretty self-aware.
Yeah.
On that account.
Yeah.
That's really good.
That has been a learning curve as well. I don't know if you remember, Jeff, but on our very first day in orientation, they had an exercise where we were juggling balloons.
The balloons, yeah.
And the valuable lesson there is that, I think the examples, we had a balloon that said pharmacy school and grades and car and...
Right, and the more important aspects of your life were a balloon you inflated more, and then the smaller ones, like you had a Netflix balloon, which was small. Mine was kind of big. But, those were smaller, and you tried to juggle all of them.
Was there a food one?
Food,
For some people.
yeah, you wrote whatever
okay.
balloon you wanted, and food would have been up there as well, to be honest. The audience can tell I have no wife or kids. But yeah, and so what came out of your juggling?
So, the whole lesson to be learned with that is that the more that you try to juggle, something's going to fall. And the balloons that you inflated bigger are the ones that you spent more time and effort in trying to keep up in the air. And the smaller ones that didn't matter so much, the Netflix, going out on Friday nights, those were the things that you kind of let fall by the wayside. And so for me, it was a big thing that, I knew I had all of these commitments. And I think already becoming a parent, you start to learn that there are certain things prior to kids that, don't hold as much water. The transition from being single to being married and single and then having kids, there are certain friendships that don't necessarily survive the transition into kids. And I think it's not as a clear-cut transition in going pre-pharmacy to being in pharmacy school. So a lot of students feel like they're abandoning their friends because they're not seeing them as much. Whereas for me, I had already made a larger transition in going from non-parent to parent, that, some of those friendships that are, fair weather friends, so to say, they don't affect you quite as much because you realize that the big things, the big balloons, I'm still keeping up.
I was just going to say that. I mean, even without those obligations at home, just getting into pharmacy school, I think we all experienced the fact that you let a lot of things go.
Yeah, there's going to be
You lose some friends.
reclassification of things, I guess. In your
Yeah.
It's a prioritization, and I mean, really, that's the goal of that exercise is for you to actually prioritize things, because you're going to have to let some of the smaller things go. You're going to have to let some of the less important things go, and realize that, you know, pharmacy school is a big commitment, and it is something that you are investing a lot of your time into, and you don't want to lose that by maintaining certain friendships, or a certain appointment, or a certain Netflix watching routine.
I mean, let's not get ahead of ourselves, but yeah, no, and I definitely understand. And the school did well at driving that home, I believe. And I think most pharmacy schools do a good job of at least making people aware that's in store for you.
Yeah, and we've also attempted, in our Meet the Pharmacy events, we also attempt to impart that. And, the Meet the Pharmacy events are prior to orientation. So they have, the full summer ahead. These are, newly admitted students. And we kind of try to, let them know that this is your last summer of freedom. If you want to go out on a cruise and you want to, let your hair down, now is the time, because, once pharmacy school starts, you're in it.
Mm-hmm. That actually leads us into something Randy was curious about.
Yeah. Now that you're coming to the end of school, you got a few months left there. Wow.
Finally.
Goes by quickly. Is there anything you wish you did differently?
That is a tough one. It's actually been, for any other fourth years and for, third years and second years coming up, December is definitely a time for reflection. Mm-hmm. As you're prepping your CV and applying for residency programs, you start to look back at everything you've done in the last 3.5 years. I can honestly say, looking back, that while there might be one little thing here and there that I thought I could have done better, or I wish I had said a little bit differently, or I wish I had approached a little bit differently, I look back and I'm really proud of the last 3.5 years.
Should be, yeah.
Really proud of the way that I was able to manage things. Mm-hmm. And I try to view everything as a lesson, a lesson to be learned somewhere. So the moments when I struggled, or the moments when I felt like I wasn't keeping my balloon in the air for something, whether it be school or husband or kids, I took that as a lesson learned moving forward, to make sure that, I spent a little bit more time. I came up with certain ways and certain things to make sure that I was giving priority to the important things. And looking back, I'm really proud of the way that I was able to manage everything. So I can't really say there's anything specifically that's, glaring that I wish I had done differently. Sometimes I wish I had stressed a little bit less.
Oh,
I think we all
might
have that sentiment.
But I also think that it's, there's a good amount of stress. There's something that keeps you on your toes and keeps you pushing forward. I also can look back and know without a doubt that I'm glad that I didn't walk through thinking, oh, I've got all this experience and I'm going to be just fine, because I think it pushed me to work harder and,
Mm-hmm.
Push myself to explore new things and have new experiences.
And you have achieved a lot. And if I can just say objectively, I think you're, one of the great students in our class. I think you do excellent.
Thank you.
And to add some more balloons, to give the audience some more background, you are very well involved in some of our organizations as well. And we're talking about student ambassadors, which Randy is also one. And you can explain, what that is.
Thanks for the plug there, Jeff.
Hit up Randy, when you come to UF. And so I know you two have worked together in that sort of thing. I know you're involved in student ambassadors, involved in our Phi Kappa Epsilon,
Mm-hmm.
a few other things in addition to everything we just talked about. So maybe you two can tell me a little bit about organizational involvement and what that entails and how you manage that as well.
I'll continue. I'll give the stage to Ms. Landers here, because my orientation, that's one of the first faces I saw, mm-hmm. and just gravitated towards. So I'm gonna let ma'am, you have the floor. I think you've done well.
Same for me. When I took my first tour, so the ambassador program gives tours to students, anybody, not even students, anybody that would like a tour of the Orlando campus. Mm-hmm. The ambassadors offer those tours. So when I was applying, I had a tour of the Orlando campus, and I met an ambassador. And it's the very first impression that you get. And I hold strong with your first impression is make or break it. And, to be proud of the campus that you're in, you want to be able to put your best foot forward. And, there's a certain time to apply for it. So as soon as that came along, I said, yeah, I want to do that. And more than anything, one of the reasons going behind it was I wanted to be able to let other, parents know and people who were non-traditional students that had been technicians prior. I'm in my 30s, so I'm, a non-traditional student in that sense as well. My bachelor's is not in, regular chemistry. My bachelor's is actually in forensic science.
We've got a few of those. We've got some art majors and stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to be a voice for some of the non-traditional students. And you don't necessarily always get those. A lot of times our non-traditional students are, working other jobs, or they're not able to commit a lot of time on campus. So I really wanted to try and make a voice for them as well. And going in with all of the other organizations, I thought, once I become a pharmacist, I'm going to want to be involved in, the major organizations on the state level and on the national level. So why not, while I'm a student, be involved in the organizations on the student level? So I think it gives you a great sense of achievement in being able to make something happen. Being a student in a large organization on a national level, on the professional level, you might not feel like you're always making a big headway, but being a leader in a student organization, you can see a lot of change, and that really is motivating for you to keep on going and making a little change and then moving to a bigger org and making a bigger change.
Right.
Just gives you the momentum to keep on moving forward and, making change and knowing that as one person, your voice can be heard.
It's funny that you mentioned that because your involvement here was not only yourself. Like Jeff had aforementioned, 2 young girls were also with you when we had the organizational things on campus, the Mr. COP events. And shout out to Mr. Kevin Landers, because he also was on campus and helped, I think, with that support system with you here on campus and your organizational involvement. What could the spouse of someone in pharmacy school do to best support their husband or wife?
How could someone be a Kevin Landers?
Essentially.
He's going to listen to this.
It's very tough to be a Kevin Landers in all reality. But, I will say, coming to class and, learning the material and taking the tests, that's my part in pharmacy school. But really none of that would be possible without Kevin. I mean, we have 2 kids, we have a house, we have dinners, we have, laundry to do and all this stuff. And he makes it happen. He's the one that pushes me to be involved and to go out and go to events and lets me know that, he's got everything at home taken care of. He's got the girls. To arrange this today, I actually had to double check that he could leave work a little early and pick the girls up. Arranging childcare issues,
Bless
and
his
making
heart.
sure,
Huge shout
making
out.
sure that
Once again.
making sure that they're fed dinner as well. But honestly, he's also so much more than that, because he's supportive in every other aspect. I mean, he's actually filmed a couple of the videos that we've done, the
Yes.
KE Rush video, as well as the Welcome to Orlando video. He really is my biggest cheerleader. The girls are my mascots.
They're campus royalty.
They're
at this
unicorns
point.
through
Yeah.
and through.
Yeah.
They were actually at our white coat ceremony wearing tiny little white coats.
They're many celebrities. The whole family.
Yes, yes. And, I think having a really strong support system is vital, especially when you're in a marriage. There is an expectation to spend that much time with your significant other. And, Kevin understands on certain nights that I'm too busy to, talk or cuddle or watch a movie or have a discussion about, his day at work. And he's really understanding about that. And then I also have a great support system beyond Kevin. I have fantastic in-laws and fantastic parents that, watch the kids so that Kevin and I can have a date night, here and there. and taking that time to make sure that you invest in those relationships is vital. I look back on it and I think that I wouldn't have been able to accomplish anything that I've accomplished without the support system that I have. So, Kevin, he was in the military for 9 years, and I was the military wife that followed him around, and we moved all over the country, actually all over the world. And when he got out of the military, he said, all right, your turn. Whatever you want to do, I'm going to follow you. And so, he's living up to his word for sure. And I know he's very excited for May to come, and I don't think he's anticipating what the next year is going to be like.
Sorry, Kevin.
Love you.
You mentioned the girls just now, and I wanted to get in specifically to that because we have several classmates with kids. I think the highest record holder is 4. If you know who I'm referring to. Yeah,
She's actually my grand big in KE. She's actually a large reason as to why I joined KE.
Yes, yeah.
Mothers stick together, and
I remember that when we came on campus. Yeah.
She actually sought me out to help me, give me advice. I think she even offered to pick my kids up at some point if I was having issues. Maxine is a true saint, and she's amazing. And, really, I think from other students telling some of the younger classes below me, that I was a mom as well. I've had a number of moms come up to me and, ask me for advice. And I think really the biggest advice that I can give to other mothers is that you can do it. Kids are always surprising and interesting, and there's always something new. And I kind of feel like if you can manage being a mother, you can manage pharmacy school. In a lot of ways, I think that the girls have been a huge benefit to me. There were times when I first started, they were 3, and I'd be watching lectures, and you're sitting there watching hours and hours of lectures, and they gave me a well-deserved study break whenever they wanted. When they would come up and ask me to cuddle or ask me to play, that was my moment to shut the computer, turn my pharmacy brain off, and live in that moment. At 3, it lasted for 45 seconds, but, it was one of those where I knew that I was going to be cooking dinner every night. I knew that I was going to be putting them to bed at 8 o'clock every night. And in a way, I think that stability and that level of routine helped me a lot through the last 3.5 years, for sure.
That's good to hear. And so I think the takeaway from that is that having that established routine is what makes it that much easier. That was going to be my next question. I think you answered it. How do you tell the kids, okay, mommy has to study right now, and how do you tell Mr. Landers, okay, Hillary has to study right now?
It's the same answer for both. Mommy has to study right now.
Yeah, and it is what it is every day.
Yeah. We have been creatures of habit for as long as we've had the twins. We've had them on sleep schedules when they were babies, and we are maintained by routine. So they wake up at a certain time. We have baths on a certain schedule. We have bedtime at a certain schedule. And honestly, I'm not sure I can claim any sort of responsibility in this, but I have very well-adjusted kids.
Okay.
And I think that plays a lot into it. They are fairly low maintenance in consideration for what it could be. I will say that.
They're the cutest also.
They are adorable. And that's why I keep them. But yeah, it's a routine helps keep everything together. And every now and then it's okay to deviate from the routine. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, we're all kind of itching to get back to routine when we do have some kind of, event or something that goes on that breaks it.
That's great. So, it's funny. We get into pharmacy school and we've got all these passions and goals that we want to accomplish. And life continues to go on. Jeff Goldblum once said, life finds a way. So every year we have classmates who announce engagements and baby plans during the 4 years of pharmacy school. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think someone is helping them all those years, or afraid of pharmacy school? what is that life? What do you think about those decisions and things like that?
You know, I like this question because we have your perspective coming in, after the fact, after, coming in married and coming in with children. And of course, we have Mr. Randy Boodram here, who did propose and is planning to get engaged in the midst of pharmacy school. So congrats to you, actually.
Life finds a way.
Yeah, he found a way.
Thank you.
And thank you to future Mrs. Boodram for taking him.
She'll have her own special on support.
See, but she said yes in the midst of all of this.
She did.
So it's only going to go up from here.
I said, "Are you sure?"
Even he didn't believe it when she said. But so I want to hear a little from both of you, from your perspective, and from Randy here, who took that step during pharmacy school.
I think that's an excellent point. Life finds a way. I have actually had moments where, I've mentioned this to someone that I'm back in school. And of course, with Facebook, you are somehow friends with all of your, high school classmates and seeing some of the things that they're doing. And, you could look at my situation two ways. I'm in my 30s and I'm in a doctoral program and I'm, achieving my dreams, and I didn't let something stop me. I didn't let timing that I'm not in my 20s and now that I have kids, I didn't let that stop me. Or you could look at it as, oh, she's back in school. And I choose the former. I set a goal for myself and I set out to achieve it despite everything that somebody might assume would stop me. So, the fact that I think it was 8 years past my bachelor's when I applied, and the fact that I have two young kids, they were 3 at the time, married. We had just moved into a house, a townhouse, but we had just taken on a large responsibility. So there were lots of reasons that I could have said, nope, now is not the right time. But I've met people that said they wish they did. And I don't remember who said it, but you miss 100% of the chances that you don't take.
I think it was Michael Scott from The Office.
Probably. Somebody else. But regardless, it's one of those things that I'd rather deal with the struggles now than never deal with the struggles at all and go the next 20, 30 years wishing that I had pushed myself and I had really, put myself to test my limits. And I feel like I'm testing my limits now, so I definitely know what I can deal with. So yeah, I think if there's something that you want to do, then
shoot your shot.
Just go.
And Mr. Boodram, you shot your shot.
I did. Now listen. This young lady, I was lucky from the beginning to meet her. She has been my rock and supported me before pharmacy school, through pharmacy school. And I said, she's got to be there for me after. So let me go ahead and get on this one knee and propose to this young lady because she is amazing. She understands, like I'm sure Mr. Landers does, that there are some priorities that might interfere with the relationship or sometimes spending time alone. But she understands it. No kickback. Helps me with projects throughout. If I need her, she's super creative, and the love is there. Let's not forget that. The love is there, and because I think it's a investment, she invested in me, and I don't want to let her down. And I knew she was the one, and decided to just make that. I'm a meticulous planner. I might not look like it if you see me, but I am. I have like
might
3
not look like I ever have a plan,
but I do. There's a method to the madness.
I've seen your bow ties. You plan.
Thank you, Adam. And I try to plan and execute, and she allows me to do that. We work well as a team. And ultimately, I'd like to have the success of Mr. and Mrs. Landers there. So that's why I decided to shoot my shot. And I was successful. Now, shopping for a ring is a whole different story. And that's
we could do an episode on it,
actually, for that.
All
but
right.
It's a journey, and decided to take that step.
Good.
It was the right time.
I'm glad.
Thank you for mentioning that.
I'm glad for both of you. And
Absolutely.
we were talking about this before you had showed up, Hillary, actually. And this, I think I'll make this our last question. Career paths when you're in this stage, when you're planning a marriage now, or when you have all these responsibilities at home. Do you think this changed what you wanted to do coming out of pharmacy school. We know we have choices where, you know, you could take a job in retail and come out and make a great income and have set hours. A lot of people take the residency route, which is very time intensive, pretty tough, and it's another year of school, and obviously the income is a little less until you come out of there and get a staff job. Do you think being in these situations changed what your plans were?
I don't think it changed my final goal. You know, my final goal is to be a pharmacist working in an AmCare setting where I'm interacting with patients and I'm, you know, educating them on their medications and I'm, you know, making a real difference in their healthcare. Do I think that it changes the trajectory of how I get there a little bit? Definitely. You know, if I didn't have kids and I didn't have a husband and a house, then I would, you know, be applying to residencies all over the country. You know, I would be setting my heart on a PGY2, you know, push myself to be as trained, as, you know, highly trained as I possibly can. I am still applying for a residency. I'm not 100% sold on doing a PGY2 just yet because of some of my, you know, personal obligations. I'm applying just to the Orlando area because of my personal obligations. So does it change the route that I get to my final destination? Absolutely. But I'm not selling myself short on what my end goal is because of that.
Mm-hmm. Any last thoughts, Randy?
No, I agree. I think if something happens, we have a passion. That's why we decided to help patients and take this route. But I'm also a non-traditional student. Came here later. I have a bachelor's from UF in sociology. I think the end goal is there, but the route, there's multiple avenues that we can take to get there. And we're kind of arrangers as pharmacy school students. We look at all these medications and figure out which one's right, which one's wrong. How do we change this to best optimize it for the patient? We kind of take a little bit of that in our lives, and how do we rearrange this and that might show up when we don't anticipate it. But that still doesn't stop where we're trying to go. Might take a year or two here to get there, or different route. But you ultimately, you know, that passion still continues to drive you, and your support system continues to drive you to get to that end point and that end goal.
That is a fabulous pharmacy analogy. Bravo.
That's the man.
I learned from my upperclassmen at KF4.
He's trying to get some brownie points. He's trying to get some answers.
You
for the
got
next
it.
Trying to show up on the
Brownie
next episode.
Yeah. So that was our last question. On behalf of me and Randy, let me thank you so much
Absolutely.
for making the time here, and the babysitter and everything that had to go on to get you here and coming straight from work. We appreciate you.
Yeah.
We appreciate Kevin and little Avery and Reese. They should be old enough to listen to the podcast, so maybe it can be like their bedtime, story tonight.
It might actually put them to sleep better than anything else I read.
Whatever works.
Good job, Jeff.
Yeah, and that's why we're here. That's why we do it.
For the kids.
So that has been another episode of Capsule Podcast Productions for the kids. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Pleasure as always.
Big thanks to Jeff and Randy for helping me out with this podcast, and a big thanks to Hillary for being on the podcast. Hopefully we can have her on again to talk to her about whatever cool endeavors she's into after graduation. And as always, I'd like to thank Sephiros for the music. The song is called Celestial, and you can find it at freestockmusic.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you guys again soon.